everybody, and welcome to another episode of Malone Bailey's official podcast, Everybody Counts. Thanks for tuning in today. I'm Caroline Rosen, and I'm from the marketing department here at Malone Bailey. For those of you tuning in for your first time, welcome. Our podcast, Everybody Counts, features various perspectives on a variety of different topics. So whether we're talking about the latest SEC and FASB updates to discussions on recruiting, retention, practice management, and much, much more, Everybody Counts explores trends and hot topics that affect us and those in our business. Tune in to hear from partners and staff alike. The conversation is versatile and everybody's input counts. I'm really excited today to be joined by Kim Buettner, Malone Bailey's Human Resources Generalist, and Matt Setzakorn, Malone Bailey's Administrative Assistant, to discuss how Gen Z is affecting the workplace. Welcome, Kim and Matt.
Hi, Caroline. Thanks for having me today. I'm excited to be here to talk about today's topic.
Yes, we're so happy that you're on.
Yeah, thanks for having me too. I'm really looking forward to talking about this with you guys.
Thanks for being here, Matt. I guess before we jump into the topic at hand today, why don't we start off with just a little bit about each of your backgrounds? So, Kim, we can start with you.
Okay. Well, I am a Houstonian. Well, actually, I grew up in Missouri City, but have been a Houstonian for my entire life, other than when I lived in Austin and DC, where I went to school. I went to George Mason University and graduated in 2003 and with a bachelor's in government international affairs. And I graduated from HBU, what is now HCU, with a master's in human resource in 2007. I've been in the HR field since about 2007, and I love doing it. I just joined Malone Bailey last year, but I feel like this is the place where I'm supposed to be because it feels like I've been there for a while.
It does feel that way, and we're so glad that you're part of our team.
I'm so happy to be here. I've done recruiting on and off since 2007. It's not my sole focus, but I have done it, and it is changing. It has changed drastically with the new workforce entering. And I think Caroline and I have had off-the-record conversations about it, but just trying to keep up with all of the different changes has been an ever-evolving process.
Right. It certainly is. Well, I think you're the perfect person to be joining us today for this conversation. And Matt, you are too. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I also grew up in Houston, born and raised here. I went to school to Texas Tech University, where I graduated with a bachelor's in public relations. I graduated in December 2018. Where I also did some, PR work. I did some journalism work. So I worked in the media a lot over there. And then I had an internship in Austin after graduation, and then COVID hit. So I had to pivot a little bit. And so I did some customer service, barista jobs here and there. And now I'm kind of getting back into the corporate world at Malone Bailey, where I started in this past December. And I've been really loving it so far. It's been a good time. I've met great people, really grown a lot so far, learned a lot. So yeah, that's just a little bit about my background, kind of where I'm at now.
Well, we are so glad to have you on the team as well. And, Kim, since you spend a lot of time on recruiting in your role, you're such a great resource for this discussion. And then Matt, of course, you're part of this age demographic of Gen Z. So you can provide a lot of great firsthand insight on this topic as well. So let's get started. Let's jump in. There's lots of information out there, lots of articles talking about Gen Z and how they are living their lives differently from the generations before them. There seems to be a lot of attributes that are so specific to each generation. And I think once again with Gen Z, we're seeing something unique here. So let's start with exactly what the term Gen Z pertains to. So Kim, I'm going to toss this question over to you. If you can help us define Gen Z a little bit.
So Gen Z is the generation that was born between 1995 and 2012, although those dates can be kind of fluid, just like any of the other generations. The reason why they're named Gen Z is because, as we know, there's the baby boomers, the Gen Xers, the millennials, which are also known as Gen Y, and then just Gen Z. They were the one that came right after that. They make up about 68 million people in the US population.
Wow.
Which is that's a large amount of people. Although millennials are 72 million and baby boomers are 70 million.
Okay.
They're still pretty in par with everything. They began entering the workforce when they turned 22, which was about in 2017. And in 2020, they made up about 40% of the workforce.
Wow. It's such an interesting generation at the timing in which they've entered the workforce because of the pandemic, which I know we're going to talk about in just a little bit. Thank you for helping us define this generation. Matt, I'm a little bit curious to know more about how Gen Z is described and what's important to them, what's not so important to them, what makes them tick, what motivates Gen Z. So, and because you're from this generation, you're the perfect person to tell us.
Yeah, so I would say I think one of our biggest motivators is just a sense of purpose. We want to make an impact on lives for our friends, our family, everyone around us. Just our main goal from Gen Z is to make a positive impact on the world. We like to travel. We like to have fresh, new experiences and see the world and make these positive changes where we see fit. We aren't also as like hustle culture oriented as previous generations. We like to, experience life, take it day by day, that kind of thing.
Okay. I like that term, hustle culture. I hadn't heard of that before, but that's an interesting term. Okay, thank you for that. So, Matt, on that note, with Gen Z entering the workplace in 2020 and 2021, they had to work around COVID when it was at its peak. So what are some other changes that we're seeing due to the pandemic?
So I think one of the biggest changes the pandemic really made Gen Z kind of pivot around was our generation just seeing firsthand just how expendable people were with these big companies, these major corporations. We saw how these corporations and companies were reacting to the pandemic. We're then hearing these CEOs talk about their record earnings on these earnings conference calls. And so we're a bit taken back by that. So that was, I think, also a huge catalyst for this quiet quitting thing. That was a huge hot topic not too long ago as well. The pandemic also popularized working from home, which many people won't even look at a position if it's not fully remote or at the very least hybrid, because they've become so accustomed to working from home that it's basically a job requirement for Gen Z.
Interesting. Okay.
What's also interesting, Gen Z, is that unlike the generations before that looked at a job as a time mentality, that you went to work from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, it's been noted that Gen Z looks at it as a task mentality. So they will work the longer hours if there is a deadline, but they do like that work-life balance. So but also work outside of the office to make so that their deadlines are met. And that's something that they really work very hard as a generation to do. They make sure that their deadlines are met, whether it is on a Friday, a Saturday, or a Sunday. So.
Okay. And I think it'll be so interesting just to see over time how older generations, respond and react to, a way that's very different from the way that they've tackled their work, right? So I think it'll be interesting, and there's a lot more to come on how general differences compromise on certain things in the workplace. So Kim, along with this new work model that Gen Z has brought to the workforce, what other ways have companies had to adapt in order to attract new employees from this generation?
Like we stated before, the most important aspects of a job for Gen Z is salary, work-life balance, and job duties. They understand that it is their responsibility to navigate their own career path. So they like to lay out what they would want to do, which means that a recent survey said that 71% of Gen Z expects to change jobs at least 3 times. And that could be jobs or careers, while only 30% expect to work at 2 jobs or less. Another thing that was surveyed was that 70% of Gen Zs described the salary as the top motivator, and that a must-have is health insurance, which I think is very different from when I was coming into the workforce. I didn't even worry about health insurance. So they expect to have a good amount of PTO, and a lot of these companies are now adding student loan repayments or tuition reimbursement to help, because as Gen Z looks at it, is that they need help investing in themselves to continue their career path. But the number one perk requested by Gen Z is providing food while working. Someone recently told me that the one thing they love about busy season lunches is it's one less thing to think about. They can be really productive knowing they don't have to go find something to eat at lunch. So
I'm glad. Yeah, that's interesting. And I'm glad that that is something that we offer during our busy season period. So good to know.
Yes. Another interesting thing about Gen Z is they grew up connected to technology. We have to remember that they were born when the first iPhone came out. So they have no patience with response times. They are an instant gratification generation.
Yeah, true.
50% of Generation Z spends at least 10 hours a day on some type of phone, computer, or tablet. And that makes a difference when you're trying to get people to apply. If you don't automatically respond saying you've gotten their application, they will end up ghosting you.
Wow. Yeah, such a, I guess, kind of a unique or new to the rest of us kind of communication patterns as well.
Yes, they are used to being 100% available all of the time. So one of the things that I have noticed, and that some managers have noticed, is that they text a lot more. Getting them to get it on Teams is a little bit harder, but that's okay. One of the things that is a little different about Gen Z growing up with this technology is that they do like to have the face-to-face interactions with their supervisors and managers. 40% of Gen Z surveyed mentioned that they feel like they have done something wrong if they don't get that daily interaction. So there are larger companies out there in our field that have instituted cameras on 100% of the time to ensure that there are no communication barriers. But I think that's one reason why I enjoy the hybrid model, is because they do get that, and they also get the time for them to be able to work on what they want.
Right, because it's interesting, Matt pointed out earlier in the conversation that there are many from Gen Z that are really looking for a work from home position. They want that option, but I think that does have to be balanced out with, a policy like cameras on or something of that sort, so that they do also get the face time that they're looking for if they are working remotely. But I actually think that's quite brilliant, because so much does get lost when you can't see somebody's body language, right? So much gets lost in translation. So that's I think with their desire to work remotely, it'll have to be balanced out with the use of technology so that, communication issues don't arise
Right.
from not being person to person in person.
Right. Yeah, I think these changes also have just seen great success too. Like the hybrid model has been proven to be a lot more productive as well. A lot more people have been getting a lot more work done when they have at least hybrid, some kind of work from home structure. And so I think what's important for employers now is to be open to these changes. It can be really hard to change something, especially if it's worked really well in the past. But just because it worked really well in the past doesn't mean it's going to translate well to the new generation coming in. Besides, every new generation brings with them these major changes into the workplace. So millennials, for example, are responsible for really digitizing everything. That's the generation that saw the rise of technology, and they saw just how useful it was and brought that use of that technology and social media and all that into the office around them. And so it was the norm to have these piles of paperwork on the desk, and now it's the norm to have everything on your computer in these separate files. So now just clean desks everywhere, and everything is just in the computer. So it really digitized everything. So employers today just need to be ready for change when it's time to change, because a lot of these new generations aren't even going to look your way if you don't adapt to that and you just stick behind.
The change is here, right? They're here.
Yeah, it's not where you can't do anything about it. You just have to adapt to it and just go with the flow of it.
Yeah, and the truth of the matter is that Gen Z is just the newest generation entering the workplace. But when it was the millennials, there were a lot of changes that older generations had to get used to then, and before that and before that as well. And I think the other part of it is sort of just a meeting in the middle, right?
Right.
Balance. That's, I think, the only way that everybody will feel like they're sort of getting what they value the most, right? Regardless of what generation that you're from.
Right. And I think also these changes also are implemented every few years, because right now the next generation, I think it's called Generation Alpha, their oldest members are I think in middle school. So give them a few years and they'll be entering the workforce, making these different changes on their end as well. So it's a never-ending cycle.
I think that's the one thing about, new people coming into the workforce. It's always going to be an ever evolving place, especially with technology. Mm-hmm. But one thing I will say about Gen Z, don't ghost people. We know that happens. And
right.
It's just don't burn that bridge. That would be my one only advice. If you don't want to take a job, just say thanks, but no thanks, because that is something I am seeing in recruiting. Don't burn that bridge, because you could have an opportunity to go back. And that's one of those things of being flexible and having an open line of communication. If you would like that from your employers, you have to make sure to have that with yourself as well.
Right.
I do think that, but otherwise, I think that while they say Gen Z wants a lot of change, there's not as much as we think. They really want to make sure that there's respectful treatment of all, which I think is fair. And I think we've been working towards that, the world. And then they want to make sure that there is trust between employees and senior management and opportunity to grow. And I know I see that at where we are at Malone Bailey. And I think that's one reason why people stay. But yeah, the other thing I think is they want to have a community at the office. And with the pandemic, that did change it. And I do think that we work really well at making sure that we have engaging events for our employees. But yes, make sure to plan those things and have moments of community, because remember, these are the people that you spend most of the day with. So you want to have a place to be able to go and talk and know that you're valued at your office.
Right.
So.
Well, this has been such an informative conversation. I think that there are so many companies out there that will be able to benefit from this discussion, and there's so much more online and just to read about. Kim, is there anything else that you want to add in terms of what are some of the other ways companies can grow and improve with this new generation in the workforce? You've covered quite a bit.
I have covered quite a bit. I will say that one of the places that I've gotten the information from is called Working with Gen Z.
Okay.
It is a SHRM approved book. So,
okay.
And it's by Dr. Nishizaki.
Okay.
And it says that the biggest things about recruiting people here for Gen Z is really the four P's of marketing: product or service, place, price, and promotion. So I just really think that, we've got to make sure that we say our product, which is our company culture and our core values. And of course, we know price and place, and then how we communicate it. And we've been working on that, being more with social media, text messages, making sure we respond to people as soon as we receive anything from them, so.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Kim, and thank you, Matt, for joining us today to have this important conversation.
Yeah, of course.
And we hope that you'll both come back on the podcast soon. And we want to thank everyone for tuning in today to listen. And we invite you to check out our website, www.malonebailey.com, where you'll be able to find this podcast and many more from the past with lots of other great topics. So be sure to check that out. Thank you again for tuning in today, and we'll see you next time.